In the previous module, we noted that the expected return from a portfolio is equal to the weighted average of the expected returns from the shares in the portfolio. But the risk of a portfolio is less than the weighted average of the risks of the shares in the portfolio. The reason for this is something called correlation, which measures the extent to which shares tend to move together or in opposite directions. If the correlation between each pair of shares in a portfolio is equal to +1, then in that case the risk of the portfolio would be equal to the weighted average of the risks of the shares in the portfolio. However, in the real world, this never happens. If the correlation is -1, returns will always cancel out. We achieve the minimum possible risk, and if we choose the weights appropriately, we could in theory construct a zero risk portfolio. Once again, however, this never occurs in the real world. In the real world, correlations fall between 1 and -1. As long as the correlations are less than 1, there is some benefit from diversification, because at least some of the time returns will be moving in opposite directions. The risk of the portfolio will be less than the weighted average of the risk of the shares in the portfolio, and can sometimes be less than the risk of either share. The lower the correlation, the greater the benefit from diversification, the greater the reduction in the risk of the portfolio. This is the formula for the variance of a portfolio consisting of two different shares. It looks complicated, but we can break it down into a step-by-step process. This term accounts for the risk of share 1. It is the weighting of share 1 in the portfolio squared times the standard deviation of share 1 squared. This term accounts for the risk of the second share. Again, the weighting squared times the standard deviation squared. This term adjusts the risk of the portfolio based on the relationship between the two shares. In other words, their correlation. It includes 2 times the weighting of each share, as well as the standard deviation of each share, but the key term is the correlation between them. The lower this value, especially if it is a negative value, the lower the risk of the portfolio.